guys, welcome to Miss Norton's Story Time. I am so excited for our story today. If you're in my class, you know that all week long we've been talking about inventors and inventions. And we've been talking about, are those needs or are they just wants? So today's story is called The Crayon Man, and this is the true story of the invention of the Crayola crayon. Now, our inventor today is Edwin Binney, and the invention is Crayola crayons. So the question I want you to think about as we're reading is it a want or a need? Also, do not forget your I wonders. These are questions that you ask yourself before you read, as you're reading, and after you read. You can usually start these questions with our detective questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. So, are you ready to get started with our story? The Crayon Man, the true story of the invention of Crayola crayons. Now, your I wonders, you can shout them at the screen, to your stuffed animal, or to whoever's in the room with you. Are you ready? Does anybody have any I wonders? Excellent. Also, I'm going to go through the book for a couple pages so that you can do our story walk with us. And as we're doing the story walk, I want you to kind of tell yourself the story as I'm flipping the pages. Who's in it and what are they doing? Now, I'm going to save the end for when we read it. Are you ready? Here we go. Once there was a man who saw color everywhere. He noticed the yellow-orange petals of the black-eyed Susans in his garden. He marveled at the rich scarlet-red tones of the cardinal's feathers. He admired the deep blue-greens of the waves in the sea. Color made him really, really happy. But all day long at work, all he saw was black. Black dust, black tar, black smoke, black ink, black dye, and black shoe polish. His name was Edwin Binney, and he was an inventor. He worked with his cousin C. Harold Smith, and together they were Binney and Smith. Edward was a great salesman. He loved to travel the world. Edwin was curious. He had a knack for listening and making what people needed. Now, we also know that inventors have some great character traits, and we've talked about those character traits. They're determined, they're hardworking, they're creative, and here the author just gave us another character trait, curious. Edwin invented a new kind of inexpensive slate pencil that wrote very smoothly. It was gray. Children loved it. Inexpensive just means it was cheap. He invented a kind of chalk that wasn't dusty and didn't crumble. It was white. Teachers loved it. He invented a wax crayon that would write on wood and paper packaging. It was really, really black. People loved it. Now, are you ready to think about the answers? I'm going to ask you a question, and remember, you think, breathe, and release. So, what are some things that Edwin has already invented? Think about it, breathe in, and release it. Excellent. He invented an inexpensive slate pencil, he invented chalk that wasn't dusty, and he invented a crayon that would write on wood. So, when everyone, including Edwin's wife Alice, told him that children needed better, cheaper crayons, he listened. They said, the crayons we have are big, dull, and clumsy. The lumps of colored clay only make fat, clunky lines. And the artist crayons from Europe are far too expensive. Means it costs too much money. They crumble and break easily. Some are even poisonous. Edwin thought about his company's inventions. When you drew a picture with their gray slate pencil, it rubbed off at the drop of a hat. When you drew a picture with their white chalk, it smudged everywhere. If you drew a picture with Edwin's new, really black crayon, it was Well, really black. So Edwin listened, and Edwin invented. In a small stone mill in Pennsylvania, in a top secret lab, Edwin's team experimented. How could they make better, stronger crayons? Melted paraffin wax? Perhaps. Now for the crayon colors, grinding up rocks and minerals into fine powders, mixing, slate for gray, earth for yellow, red and brown, perhaps. Oh yes, and lapis for blue, pounding, sifting, and heating the colored powders. Would they be bright enough? Edwin's team kept on trying, they kept on experimenting. Now, do you think that Edwin's team was hardworking? Think about it, breathe it, release it. Now, if you gave me an opinion, yes, you thought they were hardworking, or no, you didn't think they were hardworking, remember, you have to give your reasons with your opinion. So don't forget that word, because. They came home covered in color. They experimented some more and discovered a pinch of this pigment, a sploosh of that one, a little hotter, a little cooler, and voila, lots of different shades. Now there were greens, oranges, violets, and pinks too. Edwin came home covered in color. In a large tub at the mill, Edwin's team measured out the ingredients. Melted wax, clay to thicken, something for texture, colored powders, each in just the right amount every time to make a top secret formula. Slowly, carefully, stirring by hand, they poured the special formula into thin crayon-shaped molds, smaller than any other inventors, just the right size for children's hands. The mixture cooled and hardened. Edwin watched and Edwin waited. Finally, one summer evening in June 1903, Edwin came home covered in color and announced that he'd invented a new kind of colored crayon. But what should he call it? Alice had an idea. She said, let's mix the French word crayon for stick of chalk and the word olla from the word oleaginous, meaning oily like the oily texture of the crayon wax, to invent a new word, Crayola. Crayola. Edwin listened. Now, who helped Edwin come up with the name of Crayola crayons? Think about it, breathe it, release it. Benny and Smith shipped out the first Crayola crayon boxes. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, brown, and black. 8 colored crayons for only a nickel, only 5 cents. Edwin waited. Would children like them? Do you think children were excited to get these crayons? Think about it, breathe it, release it. Children did. Now they could draw a tiny green caterpillar or the big blue sky. Their drawings wouldn't smudge and they wouldn't rub out. They were bright and could last a long, long time. Excitement over the new, colorful invention spread like wildfire. Admirers from far and wide flocked to marvel at Benny and Smith's inventions at the St. Louis World's Fair. The company's dustless chalk even won a gold medal. Proudly, Edwin and Harold showed it off, especially on their new Crayola crayon boxes. Now, if you're in my class, you could be making a connection right now. At the World Fair, we also read about an inventor who created something. If you remember, George Ferris and the Ferris wheel also presented his invention at the World Fair. And for those of you that don't know connections, in my class, if the story reminds you of something that's happened to you in your life, or it reminds you of a story that you've heard before, you can do this. And it just means you have a connection, means that you remember something. Every day, Edwin brought colorful bouquets from his garden to inspire the Crayola team. They made crayons in even more different shades and later asked children to help name some of them. At last, because of Edwin Binney, the man who saw color everywhere, who had a knack for listening and making what people needed, children all around the world could reach for just the right shade. All right, boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning in today. I cannot wait to read our story tomorrow. But remember, I told you yesterday in the video, after every book I was going to read, I was going to give you a writing prompt. Today, you have two choices. What I would like for you to do today is I would like for you to write me an opinion piece. An opinion piece would sound like this. I think Crayola crowns were a need, or I think Crayola crowns were a want. Don't forget your reasons with your opinion piece. Option 2, you can write me an information piece, which sounds like this. I want to teach you about Edwin Binney. One fact is, and then list your other facts. All right, boys and girls, I cannot wait to read all of your writing pieces and see you tomorrow. Bye, friends.